subscriptions, thumbs and notifications are a major force in video production. Please press the subscribe button in the lower right.
The shots came from the back. Big Dre, Orlando. Who shot Tupac?
To keep it for the code of the streets. It just came from the back seat, bro.
On the night of September 7, 1996, Tupac heads to the MGM Hotel in Las Vegas with Sig-Knight to watch Mike Tyson's game. In the hotel lobby after the match, the Tupacs find Orlando Anderson, a member of the Crips gang. Orlando Anderson had a criminal record of stealing goods from a shoe store that Death Row invested in earlier this year. After finding him, Tupac attacked him first, followed by the whole party. The situation was then filmed on hotel CCTV, which later became a world-famous video. At the time, Tupac and Sig were on parole, so if he hadn't died, he wouldn't have been able to avoid heavy punishment like Sig-Knight, who survived the shooting, was sentenced to 7 years in prison and released from prison only in 2002. After the assault, the Tupacs left the hotel and headed for their club, 662, in a black BMW 7 Series. From 11:00 p.m. to 11:05 p.m. they are caught and released by Las Vegas traffic police for turning the volume too big in a car. At 11:10 p.m. stop the car at the intersection between Cobalt Lane and Flamingo Road, located in front of Maxim Hotel. The two women's car stops on the left, talking from Sig and Tupac, drawing attention. Tupac raises himself above the car's sunroof and invites women to come to Club 662. At 11:15 p.m. a white Cadillac silently approaches the right side while the women talk to them, opening the windows of the car and stopping on the right side of the BMW 7 Series where Tupac was riding, firing concentrated shots at them. Of the 11 shots fired, 9 were aimed at Tupac, and 1 narrowly slips to the driving Sig-Knight's head. Tupac was hit by 4 of them, 2 in the chest, 1 in the arm and the other in the thigh. One of the 2 shots hit in the chest bloomed in his right lung, causing fatal breathing difficulties. After the shooting, police take Sig-Knight and Tupac to a nearby university hospital. He becomes comatose and dependent on his breathing apparatus for 7 days. Danny Boy, an artist and close friend of Death Row, testified about the constant threat of murder in the hospital room where Tupac was at the time. On September 13, 1996, for 3 p.m. Tupac died at the age of 25. Tupac's body was cremated the next day. 2 months later, his 5th album The Don Killuminati, The 7-Day Theory was released posthumously. Tupac Amaru Shakur was born on June 16, 1971, into an African-American family in the East Harlem section of Manhattan in New York City. His birth name was Laysane Parrish Crooks. Laysane was born a month after his mother was acquitted of more than 150 charges of conspiracy against the United States government and New York landmarks in the New York Panther 21 trial. His parents, Afeni Shakur and Billy Garland, were active members of the Black Panther Party in New York in the late 1960s and early 1970s. At 1 year old, his mother renamed him after Tupac Amaru II, the 18th-century Peruvian revolutionary who was executed after leading an indigenous uprising against Spanish rule. Tupac derives from Quechua Thupac, meaning royal. She wanted him to have the name of revolutionary, indigenous people in the world. She wanted him to know he was part of a world culture and not just from a neighborhood. Tupac's mother was a member of the Black Panther Party and is known to have conceived him during the trial. After the trial, even after her son was born, she had no regular income, forcing them to live in a vagrant camp until Tupac turned 12. To some extent, they seemed to emerge from poverty as Tupac's mother's old boyfriend lived with them since 1983. The the mother enrolls Tupac in Harlem's acting school, while Tupac takes on his first role in The Grapes of Wrath. Moving to Maryland at age 15, he entered the Baltimore Arts High School, and under the name of MC New York, Tupac began rapping, where he quit trapping high school and selling drugs on the streets in 1988 to making money after his stepfather went to jail for robbery. Since then, Tupac has worked as a drug dealer in South Los Angeles, California, before jumping into the rap scene following someone's advice, as he has repeatedly stated in his song. After finishing his high school qualification exam in 1990, Tupac followed JUNG's tour as a digital underground back dancer, road manager, and guest rapper. At that time, JUNG was a popular group and was particularly well received as a live performer, and Tupac made steady progress on the opening stage as his skills became recognized. Here, he meets Notorious B.I.G., who considers him like his own brother, and gives him a few minutes of his own performance, giving him a hands-on experience. He is the greatest and most influential artist in hip-hop history. There are no artists like Tupac in the 1990s that could replace his influence and popularity. Artistry and commercial success were both artists who captured both rabbits and died prematurely at a young age, less than 25. But records such as sales of 2 diamond albums are still no match for him except Eminem in the 2000s. He has excellent ability to write poetic lyrics with his own philosophy of life and reality of black people in the lower class, and is also called the best rappist of all time, such as human rights and social messages. Besides, the songwriting spectrum is so diverse and wide that it covers even wild and colorful hip-hop music such as gangster rap and party music. When it comes to rap skills, they are said to be relatively weak compared to his rival, Biggie. However, this does not mean that Tupac is not good at rapping, but that Biggie is good at rapping with all-time high-pitched voices, which means that Tupac is relatively inferior to this. His name came from Tupac Amaru II, a Peruvian native independence activist. The stage name is also a variant of the real name Tupac. It is still called Tupac on the mainland. In addition, there is also an example of Machiavelli. This stage name was coined after he was recruited by death row by Machiavellianism. When he was rapping in New York, he worked under the stage name MC New York. He has appeared in 7 films and a sitcom, as well as a rapper, producer, and actor. Most of them were commercial successes, and debut film Juice was also chosen as the most influential film in the hip-hop world. He has many similarities with John Lennon, whose life was full of ups and downs, and his songs reflected the spirit of ideas and times, resonated with the public with music activities like social activists, and died in an early shooting accident after leaving a big mark in the music scene. In 1991, when he made his album debut with Tupacalypse Now, Tupac quickly began to gain attention as a genius rapper who dealt with social issues extensively and deeply, despite his fairly young age, who was only 19 years old. The album made a very successful debut, with the singles Trapped and Brenda's Got a Baby having been successful, and the song Same Song sung as a member of the Digital Underground also being nominated for the Grammy Award. Around the same time, he gained huge popularity as an actor by starring as the main character in Juice, a film considered a masterpiece among all hip-hop movies. A big incident at this time was the indictment of Tupac by a boy who shot a police officer in Texas. He began to claim that Tupac's album provoked him to shoot the police, and the case began to escalate, resulting in unprecedented results of Vice President Dan Quayle's criticism of Tupac through an over-the-air broadcast. It was impressive to see the American vice president openly attacking the new rapper, who just debuted on the air. Other media outlets, including MTV, hoped Tupac would cause another problem. The album agency actively used it for marketing, and the public began looking at him with images that were all made. Some of the younger generation admired him as the incarnation of radicalism. The older generation began to hate him. and he became considered a scary fellow who should not be touched by fellow musicians. It is estimated that Tupac had a lot of trouble around this time when he quickly became a hip-hop mogul through big events upon his successful debut. The 1993 album Strictly for My N.I.G.G.A.Z was completed with an image that was much more violent than the previous one, and the single, Keep Ya Head Up or I Get Around became a hit. It was also during this time that he met Ice Cube, Ice-T, Treach of Naughty by Nature, and Snoop Dogg, etc. The movie, Poetic Justice, starring with Janet Jackson, is also a box office hit, which gives Tupac a solid footing in the film industry, but with the deterioration of his image caused by a number of post-scripted incidents. Big major studios are no longer willing to hire him. Juice's director, who starred in Tupac, had to take him out of the new film because of pressure, which led to the cancellation of other films as well, which motivated him to take a break from the film for a while. Except for the arts. The biggest incident was shooting to off-duty policemen in Atlanta, who claimed they were harassing another black man at the time, leaving the case guilty, but ultimately turning all the police around the country into enemies. Another case in which a 22-year-old woman sued Tupac for attempted rape is pending the next year. "1994 is a turning point in Tupac's life. First, he launches a group called Thug Life, while at the same time inserting his iconic Thug Life tattoo on the abdomen. This means that he will keep the position of a more radical gangster than ever, and that Tupac has found his true friends in a sense. The members will continue to be with Tupac, although they have not been very successful in commercial success, and will later remain by his side to support him, even though several members changed to outlaws. In early 1994, he starred in the film Above the Limb as a drug dealer, Lucky, while Pour Out a Little Liquor. He and Thug Life also went on the OST to sell over 2 million copies. It brings him back to fame as an actor after failing to appear in Higher Learning or Menace to Society because of his bad image. And with the unprecedented success of OST, Tupac is back in the spotlight. But in the summer of 1994, the boys also killed a police officer and said Tupac's song, Solia's Story had encouraged them, putting them back on the hot seat of public opinion. Tupac, who was caught in a shooting on November 30th and shot 3 times in the abdomen and 2 times in the head, leaves the hospital just 3 hours after surgery. Tupac wrote more than 10 songs related to the incident on that day, and also talked a lot about the last song from the Machiavelli album, Against All Odds. Tupac pointed to Notorious B.I.G. and Puff Daddy as the culprits in the case, but they denied it, and the day after the shooting, he was convicted of sexual violence above mentioned. A major event, November 29th, Tupac, who arrived in New York for the first time in a long time on the occasion of his trial 2 days later, spends time with his old friends, Stretch and members of Live Squad, and his sister's boyfriend. On the evening of November 29th, he got a call from Henchman while recording with his friend. DJ Ranji Henchman says he wants to buy Tupac's rhythm to write on Lil Sean's album, and Tupac agrees they are supposed to meet at the studio soon, but due to other things, Tupac is going to the studio late. In the meantime, Henchman and Lil Sean kept calling and urging him to come. 020, November 30th, 4 people, including Tupac and his old friend Stretch, will enter the Times Square building. As they pass the entrance, 3 people near the guard's chair follow them, and Tupac feels something strange. But as Lil Caesar calls them from afar, Tupac learns that it's Biggie there, and their bodyguards do so and just heads to the elevator. As soon as Tupac turns around and presses the button on the elevator, the 3 of them pull out their pistols and yells, "Put out the jewelry you're wearing." As a result, everyone else falls to the ground, but Tupac ignores the warning and pulls out the gun as if he felt the threat of life, and is shot 5 times in total, including 2 in the head. And they begin to steal Tupac's jewels and run away, and as others chase them, Tupac gets into the elevator while he is injured, then goes up to the studio. There were several famous people gathered together in the studio, including Biggie and Puff Daddy, who later reveals in an interview how strange this moment had been. For 45 November 30th, Tupac, who really miraculously survived, will be taken to the hospital in an ambulance and soon discharged from the hospital on the grounds that someone is still seeking his life after about 3 hours of bullet removal surgery. December 1st, about 30 hours after being shot, Tupac appears in court where his trial was underway. There were Mickey Luke and his bodyguards beside him in a wheelchair. And on that day Tupac is convicted and sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in prison, but he will not be in jail until he is bailed out and recovers from his injuries. Until then, Tupac did not think that Biggie had set him up. Maybe that's why there's nothing critical of Biggie or Bad Boy on the album, Me Against the World, which Tupac recorded before he was jailed. In February 1995, Tupac was put behind bars for being considered better in his injuries. But later in an interview, he was told in prison that it was Biggie's friends who shot him. That is, there has been a bad feeling since the time of imprisonment. On top of that, the N.I.G.A.Z album released after the shooting included a nuance that seemed to kill Tupac. After about 8 months in prison, Tupac accepts the deal proposed by Death Row's president, Suge Knight, and was released on bail from prison. Bad Boy Records helped kill him, he told MTV on his return to Los Angeles.
On February 14, 1995, Tupac was convicted of sexual assault and sentenced to 4.5 years in prison at the Rikers prison in New York. This completely destroyed the good image he had built through his previous career. He later admitted as a young black man that he failed to withstand many temptations when he walked the path of success, but still insisted on innocence throughout the case. However, regardless of these controversies, his music continues to be a success. On April 1st, when Tupac was still in jail, Tupac's third solo album, Me Against the World, released in prison, and the album soon recorded double platinum thanks to hits such as the single, Dear Mama. In time for the album's release, Tupac had a prison interview with VIVA magazine, where he said his life was so dominated by his unhappy childhood that his days away from drugs and alcohol gave him a chance to look back. He said he could feel the existence of God for the first time after being shot 5 times, and that his future life would be an opportunity given by God to help him achieve something. In August of the same year, officials of Bad Boy Records, including Notorious B.I.G. and Puff Daddy, told the same magazine that they had nothing to do with Tupac's shooting. In October 1995, Suge Knight paid $1.4 million in bail and took Tupac out of jail to belong to his Death Row Records. The terms of the contract were to use the money paid on bail as a down payment, and Tupac was to release 3 albums on Death Row. Most of the albums that were released after death were also planned at this time, about 150 songs. All Eyes on Me was recorded in October 1995 and released in February 1996. The 2-piece album achieved 5 platinums in April 1996. 2 months after its release, and as many as 9 platinum records by 1998. The singles, How Do You Want It and California Love will top the Billboard charts. For your information, hits Em Up, which first broke the Bad Boy record on the How Do You Want It single released in August, was released for the first time. All Eyes on Me is the first 2 albums in history to be released by a solo rapper, and the second after Me Against the World to reach the top of the Billboard 200 and top R&B hip-hop albums charts. In the first week of its release, 566,000 copies were sold out, and 5 million were sold by the end of 1996. This was the culmination of commercial success in his lifetime career. Now, let's take a look at Tupac's death process and questions. Most of the bullets fired by the gunman were aimed at Tupac, and the reason, Suge Knight, was fine in the manic behavior after the accident led to rumors that he was an accomplice after Tupac. However, the following information soon revealed that this was not true. If their killer didn't aim, we'd go to the goal together. First, in a post-documentary, Suge Knight collects staff from within the Death Row record after the Tupac accident and before I wake and recites his anger about the situation. Second, Katie Scott, the author of The Killing of Tupac Shakur, also denied the alleged accomplice of Suge Knight. Third, Brent Becker, a Las Vegas police officer who was in charge of and investigated the case in 1996, also confirmed that he had no chance of accomplishing the crime.
How did Kathy Scott get the autopsy photo of Tupac, and why was it released to her, and what is your opinion of her putting that out in her book?
Did that hurt the investigation?
Exactly.
The photo that was released, I don't know how she got it. I probably have suspicions. It wasn't released legitimately. It shouldn't have been out there. And I can tell you that it was not a police photo, in that it was not a photograph we had taken during the autopsy.
There is also no good reason for Suge Knight to kill Tupac. He killed Tupac because of the royalties. After Tupac's death, the copyright went to Ebony Shaker, who was Tupac's mother. There is no reason to sympathize with the killing while on parole, which could face a fearful heavy punishment. In addition, Tupac still had his contract with Death Row. In other words, it doesn't make any sense that the president of the agency spoils his own life without any cause to make a big profit for himself. Therefore, alleged accomplice of Suge Knight is wrong. In 2018, former rap mogul Marion Suge Knight was sentenced to 28 years in prison Thursday for the death of a man during a hit-and-run incident on the set of the movie Straight Outta Compton. Suge Knight, 53, pleaded no contest to manslaughter earlier this month in connection with the death of Terry Carter. The gunmen appear to be members of the Crips gang, which involved the fighting Orlando Anderson, but was shot less than a year after Tupac's death. Joining the crime was Reggie Wright Jr., the president of a private security firm that guarded Death Row. He was a corrupt former Los Angeles police officer who was able to influence Los Angeles police, a suspect who was involved in Death Row's messy money relationship, and also with Crips. Reggie Wright Jr., the internal enemy who assisted in his death. Frank Alexander, who was closest to Tupac and was hired as his bodyguard, was one of the few people he treated like a family member, and the cluttered atmosphere in Death Row at the time of his death and the strange circumstances he felt at the time of his death raised questions about his shooting. And with the sightings of a number of Death Row associates, Frank feels that something is behind Tupac's death. Frank was one of the main witnesses who accompanied Tupac almost every moment and knew very well what was going on in Death Row, and when Tupac was shot, he was at the scene with members of Outlaws. Reggie Wright Jr. was hiding behind the curtain in a Tupac death. Reggie was a former LAPD, and after retirement, he founded Rightway Protective Services under the Suge Knight to take charge of security at Death Row. But this company was an unauthorized private security company. Reggie was found guilty of aiding and abetting Tupac the day he was shot. The bodyguard's testimony at the time showed that he was monitoring the real-time location of Tupac's through Michael Moore, not allowing the bodyguards to carry weapons, limiting the use of radios. He has sent the security staff off to another location to disperse them. He lied in a police investigation with the LAPD after the shooting. And Reggie Wright, he showed the audacity to appear in a documentary on Frank, playing a third-party cosplay on the recently aired Facing Season 3 Suge Knight's side of facing and threatening him with death